Route surveys are an important part of the Florida Shore Road database. Whenever possible, users are encouraged to conduct route surveys and enter the data they collect using the Route Survey feature. To enter in a route survey, simply select the plus button next to the route which you surveyed. This brings you to the Report Route Survey page. The first thing you must do is enter in your route survey details. Like site visits, you have a number of options for entering observers. Please consult the video on reporting site visits for more information about these options. Surveys, like site visits, require that you specify a date and a start time. In addition, you must also specify an end time for your route survey. You must also indicate whether or not the route was completed. In other words, did you survey along the entire route? This is important for our researchers when considering coverage of the entire state. The next question is, were nesting birds, chicks, or juveniles observed? In other words, did you perform any counts while you were on your route survey? Please consult the protocol for more information about this question. Finally, you must indicate how you surveyed the route. There is a number of options. Once you select what you used, go ahead and hit Submit to continue. You are now brought to a page where you can select your sites to enter data for. You'll see across the top there is a summary of the route survey details that you just entered. On the left, there is a data grid with sites associated with the route for which you have not yet entered data. And on the right hand side, there's your map with your route and sites plotted out. To select a site, simply select the Enter Visit hyperlink. You are now brought to a page where you can enter your observations for this site. You'll see that the page is very similar to the one for single site visits, with one main difference. On the top left, you only have to indicate whether or not the site was posted. The rest of the location visit details have already been entered during your route survey, and you do not have to duplicate this. You must then indicate the nest status and give your species counts. For more information about this, please consult the video on entering in single site visits. You also have the option to enter in optional fields, whether or not you saw disturbances, tracks, dogs leashed or unleashed, beach raking, or wet rack. After you've completed this, hit the Submit button. You are now brought back to the page where you can select sites to enter data for. You'll see across the top the site visit that you just entered is summarized. You'll see now that we no longer have any sites listed in our data grid, but we have the option to add sites to our route. When selecting this option, you have two ways to add sites. You can either add existing sites or create new sites. It's always wise to add existing sites, or to at least check if there's existing sites before creating new sites. We see that there's one existing site near our route, and that's one that we want to enter data for. So we'll simply select the checkbox and select Add Selected Sites to our route. You'll see now, returning to the page, that it showed up in the data grid as a site to enter data for, and it also now shows up on the map. If you select a site on the map, you can get more information about that site, and you can also use that hyperlink to select Enter Visits. The page to enter observations for solitary sites along routes is again very similar to the page to enter data for single solitary site visits. You must indicate if the site is posted, its nest status, species counts, and optional fields. For more information about this page, please consult the video on entering single site visits. After selecting the Submit button, you'll see that you're returned again to the page to select sites, and that your new site visit is summarized at the top as well. We can also add sites to our route and create a new site along our route. Let's try out that feature. We'll simply select the Create New Site button, and then have to indicate whether it's a solitary or colonial site we want to create. Let's create a solitary site that's near the solitary site that we created earlier. We'll just use the Capture Clicks feature here. But again, you can also enter in GPS latitude and longitude coordinates. For more information about that, consult the first video on establishing sites. We'll give our site a name, make sure that we'll use something that's specific to the site that identifies it clearly, and then we'll also indicate the species since it is a solitary site. We'll hit Submit, and we'll see that the site has now been added to our route. We see that the site has now been added to our data grid and also to the map. You'll note that the site that we've just added shows up solid, whereas the one we've already entered data for have been faded into the background. Let's go ahead and quickly enter in a visit for this site. After hitting the Submit button, we see that we have 3 site visits summarized across the top. Let's take a look at the final option, which is to enter in roving chick observations. For roving shorebird chicks and staging seabird young, you have to enter in a location for your observation. You have 2 basic options, to either capture your click on the map or enter in your lat-long coordinates, similar to how you would for solitary or colonial sites. We'll just use the capture click option here. Once you've entered in your location, then you must provide your observation details. You must indicate if the area where you observed the chicks was posted, and then give your species counts. For solitary species, this form should be used once the chicks are no longer in the nest bowl. You may still associate your observation with a nest, but you should use the roving chicks form. However, for colonial species, this form should only be used once the chicks are no longer associated with the colony. You must also indicate the type of habitat for your observation. Please consult the protocol for more information on when and how to use the roving chicks form. After you enter in your optional information, hit the Submit button, and you'll see that your observation has now been added to your route survey. Upon returning to the page, you'll see that the roving chick observation has been summarized at the top, and also an icon has been added to the map. Once you've completed your data entry, it is very important to select the Data Entry Complete button. This lets our researchers know that you've completed your entry and that nothing is left. Once it's complete, you can return to your My Data, where you see that your My Last Survey date has been updated. It is important that you enter all site visits that were observed during a route survey as part of a route survey and not as individual site visits. There is important information that will be lost if they were entered individually.